Hello and welcome to the Midwest Motoring Podcast sponsored by Hagerty. I'm your host, Matt Pesiconis, Regional Territory Manager here with Hagerty in Columbus and Cincinnati, Ohio. But I am joined for part two of our conversation with Paul Milligan, one of the Columbus, Ohio automotive enthusiasts who has a really big role in this area. He also helps run Best Light Video Production. He's into real estate and just an all-around great guy in terms of everything that he's doing for the community as well as for the car culture. So I'm excited to have Paul back in studio, well, digital studio. We're doing it via Zoom because we're trying to self-quarantine. I think both of us were for the holidays, give ourselves a little bit of time. But I'm excited to bring Paul back in. Today's podcast is going to be focused all about cars. Last time we talked a lot about life lessons and things. But we're going to be coming back to you guys right after this. Hey everyone, Matt with the Midwest Motoring Podcast. We just really wanted to take a second to thank Hagerty for sponsoring this podcast. They've been a great supporter of the podcast, and we just wanted to say thank you to them. They also wanted us to let you know that they've got some exciting news starting in November in Ohio and a couple other Midwest states. The rates for 1980s, 90s, and early 2000s vehicles through Hagerty policies have gone down. They've actually readjusted those rates a bit to be more in line with what we think the enthusiasts are looking for with our insurance. We're really trying to become that enthusiast level insurance company, not just the classic insurance company that people used to know us for. So if you've got one of those 1980s, 90s, or early 2000s, say maybe a Corvette, Porsche, or any enthusiast vehicle, it really deserves to be on a guaranteed value policy with Hagerty. So go check them out, Hagerty.com. They have a ton of information there. You can get a quote there, or you can call your local agent and see if they can offer Hagerty insurance. And if they can't, let us know. We'll make sure that we see if we can work with that agent to get insurance on their policies. If you got any questions, like I said, go to Hagerty.com. And thanks again to Hagerty for sponsoring the Midwest Motoring Podcast. Now, back to the show. All right, Paul, and we're back from our little sponsored message from Hagerty. But I wanted to just say thanks again for your time this afternoon. I know time is becoming more and more difficult to get with people, so it's always great to say, hey, let's do something fun. Let's just talk about cars for a little bit. So how you doing?
Thank you for having me back, and how have you been since part one? Since
part one, man, things have been really going well. We've had a lot of good changes, and we're kind of going to talk about that a little bit today with Hagerty, which is good. It's all good news for the community, and it's also going to be in part of our sponsored message that was before this. But, the rates are changing in Ohio, so all the kind of newer supercars and the newer sports cars that everybody actually wants to buy, at least us millennials want to buy, are going to be a lot more inexpensive to insure with Hagerty. So that's kind of the good news happening from there. But obviously, it's coming up on the Thanksgiving holiday, so we're all kind of hunkering down, trying to make sure we stay safe and stay healthy, which is how I always end our podcast. So kind of have to live what we say. But, man, we want to talk about cars this afternoon, and one of the articles I had sent you that I wanted you to read in preparation for this is that we recently here on the Midwest Motoring Podcast had talked about the SSC Tuatara, I think is how you pronounce that. That is Shelby Supercar's new hyper 333 mile an hour, 31 mile an hour supercar, or hypercar rather, that beat the Bugatti Chiron Supersport. And immediately after they posted some congratulatory videos, they then had a bunch of people trying to debunk them. And it's been a hotbed of conversation, and so I wanted to get your hot take on that. And obviously that was a week ago that we read that, but still kind of an interesting thing.
Yeah, it was interesting. I mean, first of all, I think everybody here in the U.S. was really happy to see an American car back in the running for the record. But I say the running because, clearly, even by their own admission, they really don't have the record. Even if they did set it, their own CEO is basically saying we need to rerun this at this point.
I think you're absolutely right. He did say that. Yeah.
Yeah. He later acknowledged, hey, we want to make sure there's no cloud of doubt over this record, which I think was the right call. And
definitely from a PR
they're
perspective,
going to redo it, which I think is the right decision also. And I look forward, hopefully, to hearing that they did indeed set the record,
right,
verifiably this time.
Yeah, and as I have the article pulled up, but I'm immediately missing what I need to say. But the gentleman who was driving it, and I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but the driver did say that the car definitely had more legs and that it could definitely get, have a lot more in it. But unfortunately, so a couple different, I would say, internet personalities and influencers had come to bear on the telemetry data as well as the video that SSC had released. Now, the video and the telemetry data were all done outside of house. So a lot of these, so just so everyone knows, when any of these types of cars go up against a record, they use a third party's measurement software and tools to get accurate data. In this particular situation, they used a German company called Devotron. It's Dewetron. It's German, as everyone says, so the W's are V's. So Devotron basically sends out their equipment to different people to do testing, and they verify ahead of time that the digital instruments and the programs and the software all come out of their factory being up to snuff and being extremely accurate. Well, that's where basically the buck ends with Devotron. So SSC was saying that they had a letter from Devotron saying that all the instruments that they used were accurate and that they can verify the data. Well, Devotron, after the internet and a couple different YouTube and journalists kind of stepped in to say, hey, look, this seems a little weird. We don't know if everything's there, and we'll kind of get into this a little bit. But Devotron was like, whoa, wait a minute. We didn't verify the results. We just verified that the equipment we used and that they used was supposed to be accurate when we sent it. So there's a lot of doubt that a lot of people brought up, and a lot of it came from video. I mean, Paul, you're in video production, so I mean, maybe you would have a good say into like the style that they used and if it was the right choice. I don't know.
Right. Yeah, the angle inside the camera made no sense to me. It moved around a lot, and it looked like they were intentionally moving it as like a stylistic decision, but it didn't produce something that you could really follow or figure out what was going on. I also want to say that I watched Shmi's video where he deconstructed the official video and did all the frame-by-frame analysis and everything. And first of all, I met Shmi last summer at Pebble Beach, got to talk to him a little bit. He's a really nice guy, and he's not someone, if you follow his videos or his channel, he's not a king of controversy. He's not somebody that tries to stir things up.
Right.
That's not his personality. So this was clearly not an attempt by him to, kick off this whole thing. And I would imagine he's surprised at how far it's gone now with the re-attempting it and everything.
I do think I think real quick, Paul, you hit a big thing on the head is that, these people who are questioning, a lot of them have had to defend themselves and bring out videos like explaining why, which I'm glad that they did. But at the same time, it's almost like they're questioning the results, but then people are questioning their questioning, right? So it's just this huge, out of proportion bubble that's burst.
Oh, right. So, like, what's your agenda? Like, what's your reasoning for wanting to deconstruct this record? And that's why I kind of liked hearing it from Shmi, because Tim is somebody who, like I said, he's not known to be controversial. He's pretty tame in terms of his channel. But I did watch his video, and I watched how he did his analysis, and it was pretty solid. I mean, as far as you mentioned the video side of it, his calculations were correct. His thinking was exactly how I would approach that as far as analyzing a video.
Yeah, his methodology was really, really strong.
Yeah, it was strong. It was pretty hard to argue with that, which is why they have to redo it, because he was right. So, I don't think that he's conclusively debunking anything. I think it's just kind of like, hey, there's enough question here that, if you're going to claim such a big claim, that there really shouldn't be this much question.
And I'm sure that there are some listeners or viewers out there who are going to say, well, why does it matter? Like, why, like you said, why are they bringing up a question of this record? Like, where do they profit from this? And the answer is, we're all car enthusiasts, and we want to see that these results are accurate because it means something to us enthusiasts. At least that's what I think it means to me. Like, yes, we have national pride that we want an American car to be up there, and SSC has in the past owned the fastest production car in the world, with their Ultimate Aero car before. And then immediately the Chiron, or the the Veyron took it away from them, so they had it for like a couple months. But so SSC has a history of doing this, not necessarily a history of, and we don't want to say that it's fabricated because no one has come out and said conclusively that it's fake. But a lot of the questions that have been raised have not been answered as well. So there's neither somebody confirming nor denying the fact that this could be inaccurate. So, SSC has had a history of reaching for the records and succeeding. So it's just a kind of a matter of time on this. But yeah, I think Engineering Explained also did a very deep dive into the mathematics of what was happening. And he went into such detail of finding out like the frontal drag coefficient of the car and the potential timing. So they timed out the run and calculated the vectors of all this stuff. Go watch him. I can't explain it. I'm not an engineer, but it basically came down to the same thing, being that they're thinking that the system somewhere in the software or the measurement software had I think he called it a correction coefficient, which basically says that for every integer that the data collects, it corrects it by a certain amount. And that would be one of the only real ways that they could have gotten up to this speed. And obviously then that puts the onus back on Devitron, saying like, hey, did Devitron have accurate information when it left the factory? Well, there's also some question there too, because Devitron said that because of COVID, they've got a lot less people in the factory and a lot less people certifying these machines. But when they're certified, they like go up on a shelf, right? And then they have like the certification tab, and then they get sent out as they're needed. But they don't know when it was certified or all that kind of stuff, and they're not really talking about that. So I think you really mentioned how the owner of SSC, Paul, really did the best job I think he could. And from a PR perspective, I have to agree with you.
Yeah, Jared Shelby, I don't know if you watched his video, but he posted a video a few days after the Shmee video came out and some of the other ones. And, pretty much said, hey, I not only welcome the scrutiny, which I'm sure he doesn't actually, because who does, but, he put it in a very diplomatic fashion.
Very PR way.
Said, we're going to redo it. We're going to make sure the cloud of doubt is removed. And the people that have scrutinized the first video are invited to come and be part of the new one.
Right.
And, I thought that was a really classy move. I mean, it's kind of like, hey, come out and see it for yourself. Let's work together. Let's make sure this, turns out the way that everybody wants. And I think, this is also a symptom, in my opinion, of 2020. You have all these people really bored at home and nothing better to do than do frame-by-frame analyses of, record-setting car drives. But I think it's also, we've also seen, and this isn't really a political statement so much as just a general one, but we've seen how the internet is awash with all kinds of information, and, being able to actually verify something is completely factual and objectively true is getting harder and harder, I would say, in general. So why not make sure that this is the real deal?
Right, and I think you're absolutely right. And yeah, Jared did a really good job of, I think, a very good PR role, which is to say, hey, we need to get these individuals who are questioning it out and involved in the next record-setting attempt. Whether it be to, show them that, yes, the car is truly capable of some blinding speeds, but also to make sure that the process and the methodology that, SSC uses to come up with that, record would be accurate, or at least be as accurate as can be, because a lot of these systems use like GPS and they use, data logging, but they don't actually connect to the car because the car could be wrong. Like, so it is as accurate as can be. And, I think at the same time, you have to, like, Guinness didn't question it. Guinness was like, yeah, sure. It's the newest, fastest car in the world, right? And so I think a little bit of this also should rely on Guinness and their methodologies of accepting records, right? They have a certain methodology, and if companies stick to it, maybe it needs to be a little bit stricter. Or if it comes down to, like, top speed runs, maybe it does have to be a little bit more stricter. But then that puts earnest on so many other people who are trying to make records. So yeah, it's just a very convoluted situation. The interesting thing is, though, and Engineering Explained this, kind of went into it, that this car is undoubtedly fast. Like, I don't think anybody's really questioning that this car is fast. Even if they were using some kind of corrected software, the engineering explained that the car still was probably doing like 275 miles an hour. So that's really fast. So I don't know any, like, there's not many cars that can do that. So even if SSC has some more tuning needed, some more corrected software for, their GPS system that's more accurate, it's still blindingly fast. So maybe not as
kind of one of the reasons why you want to make sure your data's accurate. Because if you think about it, if they run this again and it's super fast, but it does not equal or break the first alleged number of 331, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like 327. Well, that's still ridiculously fast. But all anyone's going to hear is, oh, so it wasn't as fast as you said it was. And it's like, no. It's still a 327 mile, just hypothetically. So that's kind of the other thing. When you're dealing in this world, you got to make sure that the integrity of the claim is there. And then also my other thought is when they do the reattempts and we see what it is. And personally, I believe that they will reach the record, and I think because they know of all the scrutiny that they'll actually break the last record.
They might have to. They're going to have to be the best weathermen. Period. Because I know the driver was saying the tail or the winds were so bad that he had to pull out of the high speed runs.
I think they wait for perfect conditions, which is, by the way, I think why they haven't done it yet. I mean, they could do it. They're waiting for the right time, the perfect barometric pressure and temperature. Plus, it takes a while to close a long road.
And it gets real scientific on all that.
Yeah, and I think it will be faster. My other question for you is, how long do you think the record stands if you assume that they do get it for real? No doubt about it. How long do you think that's going to stand?
Oh, I really hope it stands for at least a year. Just for SSC, because when SSC Ultimate Aero came out, I think it was only like 5 months between the SSC Ultimate Aero and the Veyron topping it. And then the only thing that could top the Veyron, I think, what was it? I think I'd have to rethink and go back and check my data, but I'm going to say it anyways and get it out on the internet, and then I can be scrutinized. I think the Ultimate Aero came out, and then the Veyron beat it. And then the Ultimate Aero GT, I think they brought out like a hotter version, and that beat that. And then Bugatti had to bring out the Bugatti Super Sport, right? But it was back and forth. Bugatti's got that, what is it, the blonde, I always want to say Blondie, but it's like Boldy or something like that. They've got another hypercar in development.
Yeah.
So
and it looks like it could be, the other one I was going to mention is the McLaren Speedtail. Pretty much purpose-built to go really fast in a straight line.
Right.
I mean, it's not a cornering car.
Not a very corner-specific
like a tadpole, but potentially could be fast enough to...
Speedtail's a good call. I think Speedtail could be another one. I don't know if it was... Like, I haven't read too much about the Speedtail other than knowing that, yes, it is a purpose-built car, just like the Senna was purpose-built for downforce and cornering velocities, that the Speedtail was kind of its twin, but kind of in a different way. It's yin to the yang, where it was straight out speed.
And I don't think out of the box that they're claiming it can go that fast. I forget what the top speed is supposed to be, but my thought is that, maybe there'll be like a Speedtail GTR or whatever, that maybe that'll be the one that breaks the record. So yeah, I agree. I think either the Bolide from Bugatti or the Speedtail could be options. And then, I don't know. I don't know anybody else that's working on something that's like at that level right now. But.
Yeah, I'm not. Possibly because of how 2020 has gone and how like my search for cars, because I'm searching for that next fun to drive car, which will kind of go into our next topic. But I've been hyper focused on like the affordable fun cars. So like my knowledge of like these hyper like 5 cars exist in the world, kinds of cars just don't really hit my radar that much. But yeah, I think the Speedtail is going to make 746 horsepower with 590 foot-pounds of torque. So that's not going to be a slow car by any means. No. But yeah, hopefully this does land. And just so everyone knows, the actual record that the Tatara set was a 316 mile an hour top speed. So basically the record is an average. So the 316 is its current record. But one of the passes that it did supposedly clocked in at 331 miles an hour. So hopefully, if their first run was 301 miles an hour, Second one was 331. So honestly, if they can just get 2 more consistent runs, they're going to break the record. But like you said, Paul, I think they have to go for like 335, right? Yeah. Accurate pulls. But
they need a couple miles per hour more.
Yeah. Sure. Which, and people might be going, oh, what's a couple extra miles an hour? But at 300 miles an hour, 1 mile an hour is like, that's a big ask, right? Yeah. So it's just crazy that these cars do this. Because, I mean, top fuel dragsters hit this mile an hour, right? But only for brief moments, and then the motor's basically shot. So for them to be able to run this type of speed out of these like driver cars, you can drive this car.
Road legal cars. And, you know, most, even really fast cars today, 241 is still faster than the majority of them can go. And I mean, like the newest stuff from Ferrari and Lamborghini, most McLarens, etc., they're not even doing 241 or 231, I meant.
200 miles an hour is still a huge milestone. I mean, 200 miles, any car that can go over 200 miles an hour is blazingly fast.
Absolutely.
So to do another 120 horse or a mile an hour on top of that, oof.
Yeah, I mean, it's not speed most mere mortals can wrap their heads around, myself included.
Yeah, so. I have yet to break the 200 mile an hour mark. I don't know about you, but yeah, that's still out there for me to break that speed.
I'm not far off. Obviously, was on a closed circuit in Mexico, but I've not crossed it. So.
Well, I mean, that kind of brings us to our next topic that I wanted to talk about, which was cars that you've had experiences with in the past. You claim yourself to be quite the enthusiast. I mean, everybody's in Ohio that we've at least talked to have been massive enthusiasts. But you actually do, I mean, and just working with you on, insurance side, is like you do have a pretty long history of driving some pretty amazing cars.
Yeah, I've had a few fun cars, not nearly as many as I would have liked. I think everybody can say that for themselves as well. But I have gotten to own a couple of really great cars, but I've also gotten to experience several other cars that I did not own, but was lucky enough to be able to drive either for an event or a trip or, borrowing for various events or photo shoots. So I've gotten to play in a little bit of everything. And I actually started keeping a list of all the cars I've ever driven of note. I don't obviously log random rental cars and stuff like that, but I actually have a list of every notable car I've ever driven. And there's probably like 40 or 50 on here, and no, this is not in any particular order, but I'll read a couple of them just to kind of, I haven't looked at this list myself in a while. So, but some favorites, SLS AMG, Mercedes. I briefly got to drive a McLaren P1, Ferrari 599 GTO, twin turbo Lamborghini, Ferrari F12 was really great. I got to do a really fun track experience in the current gen NSX.
Oh, wow.
And, that's obviously our hometown supercar here in Central Ohio.
Built in Marysville, Ohio.
There's so many members of Columbus Cars and Coffee that are engineers or work for Honda in various capacities. And so they've all been telling us about this car for so long, and it finally came out and I got to really experience it, which was kind of almost a shame in a lot of ways for me to experience it the way I did, because I really got to see how fantastic it actually is. And it makes me, I say it's not that it's bad, because knowing how great it is, it makes me sad that it hasn't overall performed better in terms of sales, but really fantastic car. So I've gotten to just play around with a lot of stuff like that. Personally, I've only owned a couple of cars that I really would, consider to be notable, and we can measure that based on if I have a photo of it in my office or not. And there's only a couple in here, but the first one I bought was a Porsche Cayman, and I'd always heard about the Cayman, but honestly didn't know that much about it and did not actually intend to buy one. I was hosting an event for Cars and Coffee, and I wanted to take a car to this event. This was years ago, and I had a buddy who ran a dealership, and he was like, hey, man, I'll give you something for the weekend just as a favor, which I appreciated. And but I didn't know what it would be. And so I showed up to pick up whatever the car was going to be, and it was this gray 2008 Cayman. And I was like, oh, that's cool. I haven't ever driven one. I've never really even looked at them, closely.
Right.
And I ended up having it for the weekend, and I never gave it back because it was so great. It was an awesome car. And what I loved about it is that handling characteristics of a mid-engine Porsche cannot be beaten. It is one of the best driving cars I've ever driven at any price point, at any level. Not the fastest, not the best looking, although I think it is very good looking. But it was not that it was the most of anything. It was just so perfectly balanced. And, on top of that, it also has a rear trunk and a front trunk because it's mid-engine.
It makes it a little bit practical.
Yeah, and as a guy who runs events, that was actually really handy because I was able to take stuff around in it.
Yeah.
It was a fantastic car. I loved it. Had it for a couple of years.
I just headed up to near Cleveland, just north of Canton, North Canton area, with one of our territory managers out of Florida who picked up a 2015 Cayman S, and we got to tootle around in that a little bit. He didn't have the experience behind the wheel of a manual transmission car. He knows how. He's driven them before, but just, unless you've actually driven a manual car in stop and go traffic on a hill, you're not really an expert yet, but you have to live with it. Yeah, you just gotta have to live with it, and you do kind of have to be thrown into driving a manual car to really feel comfortable. Just like anything, you could understand the principle, but not be excellent at the application. And he was one of those cases that he was really good once the car was moving. Just kind of like the start process was a little rusty, but he picked it up really quick, and that came in. And I went up there to help him drive it and feel it out. And you're absolutely right; those cars handle amazing. They feel great. For the price, you can get an amazing Porsche product from those Caymans. The only problem is it's two-seated. I did feel that, personally, and this is my own experience just from having driven some amazingly fast and visceral cars, including some Dodge Vipers, that it wasn't quite visceral enough in terms of noise and kind of the feel of acceleration that you get. But then again, it's a low-slung, lightweight car. Even though it had like 380 horsepower, it just felt slow, and that might be too cruel on the Cayman. But
I think that's exactly right. The Cayman's not a fast car. I mean, it's not a slow car, but it's not a fast car. But as you say, I don't think there's any of the visceral emotion you're going to get out of other cars. However, those cars come at a cost of their own, which is that they're far less usable in certain situations. And so, for me, I have long subscribed to the idea that your fun car should be your second car, not your main car. You should never get a car. In my opinion, you should never have a car that you're trying to truly do everything with, because it's just going to be bad at everything. Yeah,
it's that whole jack of all trades, master of none kind of prophecy.
Yeah, but I mean, it's really not, especially in Ohio. I think in certain states you could do it. I mean, like an R8 would be a perfect daily driver in Florida or California. So it's not true everywhere, but here in Ohio, you got to have a fun weekend car and then a practical car. So I daily drive a Toyota Tacoma because I have, rental properties. I need a truck for stuff. Great in wintertime, good ground clearance, super reliable. It's not like it's amazing at anything. It's not going to tow anything really heavy. It's not, it's just a good all around vehicle.
But it will tow everything that you will need it to do.
And if you need something more than that, you can rent, whatever, you can figure that out.
Right.
But the best garage configuration I've had ever so far was the Tacoma for the daily driver. Then I had an R8 V10 Spider for my weekend car. And so 500 horsepower V10 convertible, not practical at all for most things, but you go to Cars and Coffee, you go on a drive, you go on a weekend trip. It was perfect for that.
And it did have a pretty big front trunk area. The R8s did.
Yeah, it's
two duffels could fit two.
The Caymans was triple the size. I mean, I swear.
Oh no, they are big. They're definitely big.
R8 was not as big, but my question to you is, what are you shopping for if you're looking for a fun car? I mean, what's
man. So I don't know if the listeners will remember, and I'm actually kind of in a weird spot where I had an A6 for a while, and that was my daily driver. Fun car. I mean, it actually has more horsepower than a 2015 Cayman S. As I'm looking, Cayman S's have about 320 horsepower. Mine had 340. I did
some modifications. As a former A6 owner, I can vouch for the A6 also.
Very great. And my idea was because I went from owning a GTO, 5.7 liter V8, got out of its own way very quickly. I became accustomed to that. So it's like, I see a gap in traffic, I can pull out and flow with traffic and not be a problem. Well, I once drove my wife's Caliber, I pulled out into traffic, and I was almost not able to meet with traffic. And luckily enough, the person behind me let me know that they were using their brakes very vigorously with their middle finger, showing up. So I was like, okay, any car I own after this point has to at least be able to get out of its own way pretty quick. And the A6 was perfect. It felt good. It was fast enough. You could pull out into traffic and not be an a-hole to the guy behind you because you just already be up to speed. You wouldn't even have time to slam on his brakes. So
Quattro, I just have to add to that, the Quattro and the Audi is second to none, in my opinion.
If it's a real Quattro system, I'm coming after you, Haldux system. That's not real Quattro. In your RS5s or RS3s and S3s. I love those cars, but it's not real Quattro. Anyways, in that Quattro system, there's no drama. You just hit the gas and it went. So I'm kind of looking for something. Well, that car was totaled. So it recently was in an accident and somebody totaled it, it didn't look totaled, but when the body shop was like, oh, yeah, it's about 28.
Was there frame damage or what took it?
So basically, I got rear-ended. And most of the trunk took the beating. And so from the outside, it didn't look too bad. Like, oh, yeah, you just replaced the trunk, the bumper, everything was fine. And the quarter panels were all straight. Like, it didn't look too bad. But the problem is the trunk latch, fused when it was hit. And it went, about 6 inches inward and about 2 inches up. And so that ripped the inner body sheet panel of the trunk, and the bottom floorboard and all that kind of stuff came up with it. So from the outside, it looked fine. But once you open the trunk, that was all rippled and damaged. So they can just cut that out and re-weld it back in. But like with anything, it just takes money. And that was, it was just far more than the car was worth, so they totaled it. So I have an empty spot in the garage now, which is good. So I was always looking for a fun car. But it was going to be something a little bit cheaper, maybe like a Cayman, right? Something that wouldn't be as visceral, but could be at least fun, right? And I could get out and enjoy it, maybe take it to a track day, go out on some of the cruises that the Cars and Coffee group does, and enjoy myself and not necessarily bring out the Miata and feel like I was being left in the dust. But now that I have a vacancy, I can go a little bit more. Plus, Hagerty helps out with a company car, so, that helps out with, not having to round out that stable to have a jack of all trades. I can have that car that just does something really, really well. So right now I've been looking at a lot of turbos, 911 turbos, older ones, not new ones, old, like a 996 or 997 turbos. But
perfect. That's exactly what you're describing. That's a perfect option. I love that.
Plus, I did put myself in a little bit of a really bad box that was I need 4 seats. I've got my little one, so it's like if I go anywhere, I need to at least be able to put my wife in a really awkward seating position for 5 minutes until we drop our son off at daycare or with his grandparents or whatnot, and then be able to put the car back into a comfortable spot. So some people were saying, like Mustangs and Camaros, but I've owned American muscle cars. I like them, but I do not like the new Camaros or the new Mustangs that much. Unfortunately, Ford, the interiors of Ford is what turns me off to them. Their performance is great, but then they leave I guess all of the money went to the performance and nothing is left for the interior team. So you have to spend a lot of money on the GT500 the Shelby GT500 to actually get some nicety in the inside and then the performance to back it up. And then the Camaro, it's just the visibility is horrible. It's a fast car. They're really great platforms. I love that Alpha platform that they have. But it just... The visibility, it's like being in a little mailbox to me, so that's kind of out. So yeah, I've been looking at 911s. Some people told me to look at GTRs, like the newer GTRs. I really like those, but I'm hit and miss because I would want a very non-molested one, and I see a lot of them out there that have got meth injection, bigger Garrett turbos and stuff like that. I'm also a little neurotic. It's I need that little plaque with the Japanese gentleman's name that built that engine. I want it still there, and a lot of guys remove them, and it's somebody put their heart and soul into building that to the point where they put their name on a plaque. Yeah, I want that left. So they're getting harder and harder to find, but the weird thing on those values, man, and this kind of goes into Hagerty, is that the value on GTRs hits a floor and then stays. Doesn't matter. The brand new ones are obviously like 100 to 200,000. They're pretty expensive, but like the first generation of GTR hits like 70, maybe 50 to 60 if they've been molested, like had a lot of parts and stuff thrown at them. But they don't go much further than that, and that's where they started, really.
Yep.
So yeah, so I've been looking at maybe GTRs because they got 4 seats. But yeah, that's kind of where I've ended up on Porsche, and that's unfortunately once you start driving them and experiencing them, like I've driven a couple turbos, it's like I can't really look at anything else now. Like it's all tainted. I don't know about, what do you think? What do you think I should be looking at?
No, I think you're on the right track. The 911 is a victim of its own success in the sense that they're everywhere. Within the sports car range, they're very common, obviously, but there's a reason they're very common, and it's because they're very good. Performance is there, handling is there, but the other thing is that you won't hate owning it because they're actually reliable too.
Right.
For the most part. I mean, every car has its quirks, but in general, they're pretty bulletproof, and you're going to get that quote unquote exotic level performance and experience, but you're not going to have the exotic level repair bills.
Right.
A lot more people can work on Porsches. They're, I don't know, and because the 911 platform hasn't changed.
Yeah.
But I mean, maybe the 992 is starting to become more of a departure. But
yeah, exactly.
Back in the 997, 996, that's the same 911 for 20 years mechanically. So it's in terms of parts and servicing and the ownership experience, it's not a hassle the way that a lot of other cars are. And as you said, once you drive one too, I think that I think it's a perfect car for you. I mean, also I will put a plug in for the Porsche Club here. I'm not a member anymore. I don't have a Porsche anymore, but they do some cool events. They're pretty active in our area, and I think there's room for, like with any group, even mine, any group, there's room for improvement.
Oh yeah. Our PCA group,
in general, they do a nice job there.
Yeah, our PCA group here is really phenomenal. Our Ferrari Club group is really phenomenal as well.
I'm really impressed with the Ferrari Club in town. And I, again, not a member, don't have a Ferrari, but I've gotten to go to a lot of their events. I actually saw you at one, the last one they did.
My wife did. She reminded me that there is a Ferrari option to this list, which is I was looking at the FF. The Ferrari FF, and unfortunately, those are outside my price point. But though, like anyone who's like, "Oh, you need an exotic," with 4 seats, the FF is right there, front engine V12 with 4 seats and all-wheel drive. And I was learning about their all-wheel drive system is amazing. Like the technology that Ferrari put in that, I don't know how reliable they are, but the level of engineering that they had to put in that car to make it all-wheel drive is ridiculous. 2 transfer cases, 2, one for the front, one for the rear. Like, that's just nuts that they did that.
And I believe it because there was a Columbus Blue Jackets hockey player that drove an FF year-round as a daily driver. And when I lived in the short north, I would see his car. I don't know where he lived, but it was somewhere near me because I saw the car all the time.
All the time? And
I saw it in the snow. I saw it in horrible weather. I saw it, all the time. And clearly it was working well for him. So
that might be another option. If they tank in value, I think the last one I saw for sale was like still about 144. Yeah,
I haven't looked at them. I didn't know they were holding value like that.
I mean, it's a naturally aspirated front-mounted V12 in a Ferrari. Yeah, they stay pretty strong. I think they could go a little lower, so I could buy one, but they probably won't.
So on that note, in general, what do you think? So I dumped my R8. I sold it to the dealer earlier this year. And there were several reasons, but one of them was I thought the values were going to come down in cars. They actually went up this year. One of those 2020 things, right? So my question for you is, what do you think 2021, I mean, obviously no one has a crystal ball here, but do you think that this is going to normalize at some point for the used car values? Because they're still really high.
Oh, yeah, they're still super high. I think, it'd be interesting to get and have a longer conversation on values and get maybe you and like one of our valuation team members in. But from what we've been seeing, at least, is that people right now, and this happens in a lot of different industries, including car buying. I think we've seen more of it based on people are saving money based on their expenditures where they'd normally maybe have more daycare expense. So they're going, hey, we might be able to buy a new car or go buy a different used car, right? So they're fluctuating. So all kind of sales are up. But the reason I bring up all other industries is just like when we have, the markets tank, those who have money at that time and disposable income buy, right? Because they can buy super cheap and they know that there will be a time where the market will then raise back up and they will sell off and make their money back, right? So classic, exotic hypercars and the super exotic rare cars like the 250 GTOs, those are investment pieces. And we actually have Hagerty has a process right now. We're working with Paul Mall. They're the art, not the cigarette brand. Paul Mall, the art evaluators and art aficionados are saying like, hey, we know these types of collections, whether it be French wines, whether it be art, but they're also now branching into classic cars and saying classic cars could potentially be an investment. And so that's why I think right now we see that even though 2020 has not done the car weeks or the big Scottsdale auctions yet, and who knows if Scottsdale is really going to happen or not. They think it is. But like those big in-person auctions with thousands of people help. But I think all of these companies have pivoted and said, okay, we can do this all digitally. And they haven't seen the numbers that they've seen. Like the values are down a little bit in terms of these really high-end cars, but the buying interest is still very, very high. And every car that gets put up for sale is sold. And a lot of these companies, me included, who was looking for cars, prior to 2020, because if you are a true car shopper and want to really know what you're doing, it's a long process. If you're looking for your toy, do not rush that process. I have to tell everybody that because I have rushed that process before. Find the right one.
I think I've literally shopped for cars online every single day for the last decade. So.
Yeah. It's part of my process. Having a cup of coffee in the morning.
Yeah. I mean, seriously, I have my searches all saved for specific cars, specific year ranges that I follow those inventory metrics. And yeah, I mean, it's kind of a sickness. I compulsively shop for cars, but
I blame my dad for
when
that.
I find one I like, it's I feel good about, okay, I'm going to do it because
you've done the research.
I've been looking exhaustively at this for months.
Right. And I think, so to answer your question, all of the car places that I've been shopping are out of stock, or they're rotating stock faster than they can even get them in, whether that be classic, whether that be exotic. So people right now who have the ability to buy and maybe are sitting on some money going, well, I was saving it because we were going to pay for this, that, or the other thing, or, they're still working and maybe they're not, maybe their company Hagerty's put I'd say almost 98% of our workers to work from home, right? So if you're not traveling each day, you're saving money. And so people are like, well, I could sell that car off and buy a new car or whatever. Or I'm super bored. I don't have anything to do. What's something we can do that's socially distanced? We can go buy a classic car, take the top down, go for a drive. That's a very easy sell when you and your wife have been stuck at home for 9 months. So they're definitely
anyway.
Yeah. So they're definitely selling far faster than most companies can get them in. I've been talking to.
There is a counterpoint to inventory though, which is that I know that a lot of dealers are simply not restocking because they're worried about when the bottom falls out.
Yep.
And so I know a couple of buddies who are car dealers, and they're kind of like, yeah, we're really light right now, but and sales are still good. We're having a record month. We're having a record year even in some cases. But part of the reason they're low now is because they're kind of getting a little bit shy on the prices because it's man, at some point this is going to go. This is going to, the music's going to stop, and who's going to have a chair, kind of a thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So there's a lot of dealers that have, loaded up on certain cars. C8 Corvettes is a really big example, but there's many others that are going for crazy money. But at some point, that's going to be over. So.
Yeah, I think especially C8s. I know there's a lot of dealerships around here who are offering 20 over sticker for the opportunity to buy it back from you.
10 of them at a time. Yeah.
I think I was just in one of the dealerships in Dublin who was that, and they have a lot of them. And guess what? They're rotating through them, but
it works until it doesn't. So.
I think especially the C8, it's when the Z06 or the Grand Sport gets announced. That's when that chair will stop, and that music will specifically stop. But I think Yeah, I think 2021 will see still good sales numbers. I think people will still be interested, and because a lot of people are looking at, with COVID-19 and everything, they're saying, 2021 will be the end of it. Well, what will happen in 2021? Like, we all hope that 2021 will be, and I'm a very optimistic person, so I know this sounds pessimistic, but I too hope that something changes, and that in 2021 we have the answer to figuring this out. But in the meantime, I still don't think that we know where we will be in 2021. So I still think people will be looking for those escapes. And I think more so than anything, this year has been, as my wife puts it, a lot of retail therapy, where people are buying things to feel good. Because when you buy a new car, it is a fun experience to test drive. And a lot of these dealerships are trying to make it as easy as possible because, A, they don't want to, get their employees dangerously close to COVID, but at the same time they want to make sure that they're still doing product sales and things like that. So I think that whole process is so fun for some people. Yeah. Some people think it's neurotic and emotional, but I think
that's a good point. I drove the Ferrari Roma over
the weekend. Yeah. I wanted to go to that,
and it was a really fun. It was a fun car, but it was, like you said, it was also just fun to do something
different. Get out.
Kind of normal too. I mean, other than the fact that they didn't send anybody with you on the test drive, but that made it a better test drive.
Right. So, that made it the right test drive.
It made it a real test drive. But the other thing is that when people are reminded of their own mortality, their priorities shift.
Yeah.
So when COVID hits and you hear about all these deaths every day on the news, it's all we ever hear about. Whether or not you're super worried about it, it does make you think, well, maybe I need to fast track certain things that I've been holding on.
That
if not for COVID, then maybe for a different reason. But you only have so much time, right? So you may as well enjoy it.
That's a huge part of it too, man. And that's, I think, a really good thought is that mortality becomes an issue, and even if you're a fit, healthy person, you go, well, shoot, today might be the day. It just may end absolutely instantaneously, or it may be a long, laborious process. So I might as well enjoy myself a little bit. Right, so don't go bankrupt. Don't go getting a second mortgage on your house. That's not what we're saying. But at the same time, don't
live like you're dying tomorrow, but don't live like you'll live to be 150. You got to find that balance,
And I think that's kind of where I'm at personally now. It's like, hey, look, I think you were right. Mortality came into it. I was like, well, shoot, who knows how much time we have? We need to enjoy it, but also I'm a car guy, so any financial planners listening always hate car people because they're like, why do you have 40% going towards a really nice car? And you're like, because I'm a car guy, or to all your cars that you own. And they're like, that doesn't make any sense.
But you're going to be a justifiable financial. No. You're never going to be able to talk to an investment person and be like, well, and here's why this makes sense. No, it doesn't make sense.
It will never make sense.
But that doesn't matter. And what is all of the rest of your life for? If you're working, you're earning a living, and you're saving up for that goal, what's it all for if you can't have the fun output of all that?
Right.
So who cares how good or bad an investment it is? And obviously there's a line somewhere. You're saying that you've identified, for example, that the FF is beyond what you're willing to spend, and so you've got a line there that you've done. So that's good, but up to that line, go for it. So.
The other good sign is that I'm choosing cars that historically hold their value pretty well. Like turbos, they hit a floor and then they just don't move from there, right? And we've actually seen the 996, we thought hit a floor, and we thought it was going to hold there for another couple of years. Well, this year, their values have jumped by about $5,000 to $10,000, and that's a huge jump in a classic car's value when it comes to a 996 turbo, when most people didn't like this car. Most Porsche fans did not like that car. And what's happening is they're now in affordable realms where non-Porsche people are going, it's an all-wheel drive, 4-seater with 400 and some horsepower. It's not a bad little car, right? And so they're all these other avenues is what we've seen as from Hagerty. Just like with our quoting, is millennials quote far more with Hagerty now than baby boomers do or Gen X's. And that's crazy to think, and that's kind of why we've shifted our idea of classic car to enthusiast cars, because I'm a millennial. I'm on that very cusp. So I'm a self-loathing millennial, but I'm a millennial. Is that my idea of a classic car is early 90s cars, JDM, I would love to get myself a R33 Skyline. I know that's the one that people don't really like. They like the R32 and then the R34, but I actually preferred the R33 myself. So it's like, I'd love to get my hands on one of those. I love Porsches, right? This Porsche Turbo seems like a great car. And those are all now classics in our generation. So classics is that malleable term. So
and I think things like the 996, there's almost like the forgotten generations of cars or forgotten models. And I think people realize later how much cooler they are than they were perceived to be at the time. And I think the 996 is a perfect example. And the fact that you're showing an interest in it, and many, many other people are as well, more than maybe ever in the past, or certainly anytime recently, that's going to continue that value climb. And I think we probably haven't seen anything yet. I bet you it goes up another $5 or $10 grand in another year. And if you look at, I have a good buddy who has, as Joe, white 964. He has a 1990 911, and he paid $15,000 for that car. And today, and it's got 100,000 miles on it. It's in good condition,
and he likes it. He uses it.
He uses it. It's a driver car. It was like that before he even got it. It was well used. So good condition, but not by any means a garage queen. And it's probably worth, very easily 45 or 50,000. But you could probably, on the right day, under the right conditions, get 65 or 70 grand for that car. And he paid 15 for it.
Yeah.
And it hasn't been that long. It's not like he's had it for 20 years. It was a handful of years ago.
Right.
So you never know. But there are, I think, also people though that try to time and do the math too much with cars. I think it's, and I'm not suggesting that's what you're doing. I'm just saying that for others who may be thinking about their first enthusiast car.
Oh yeah.
In my opinion, don't spend so much time trying to game out how, if I get it at 17, I can sell it for 23, and you can't predict it.
You will never win on that gamble. No.
And the people that think they've got that figured out, I've been following cars for over a decade, daily, closely. It's a passion. It's literally a business. It's a big part of my life. And even despite all of that, and I also invest in real estate and in equities, so follow the market very closely as well. And I'm thinking, okay, for these reasons, this long list of reasons, used car values will plummet this year, not across all price points, but across the ones that I was interested in. I thought they would.
Right.
Because it's the price point that is high enough that it is a substantial purchase for somebody, but it's not so high that your super wealthy people are buying these cars. It's like that middle ground where 120 grand, it's a car that I would assume people would be dumping if the economy's hurting. Yeah. And I'm glad that the economy is doing so much better than we thought. That's a good thing. Not so much for my car hunt, but
agreed.
The point being, I had a lot of reasons to think that I had a pretty good idea of what would happen, and I was completely wrong. And not only was I wrong, it was the opposite of what I thought.
Right.
So, it's not an investment. Don't treat it like one. It will lose money. If it doesn't, be pleasantly surprised.
Right.
But that's not what it's for. So
yeah, this is a passion buy, right? So you should buy a car based on the passion that it gives you. And that's why I've been a little bit picky, is that I want to find the right car, right? This will be a passion car for me that I will love, and I probably will never sell. So to think of it as an investment is, it's irrelevant, really. But yeah, you're absolutely right. And unfortunately, based on the job I have, I do a lot of analysis. So I say I have sometimes some paralysis by analysis, or I'm digging too far into the weeds, and then the deal's gone already, or that car's bought. I'm like, oh, I should have bought it, and then it's gone. So, but speaking of buying cars, Mr. Paul, I'd love to pose a question to you. If you had, let's say, for the time's sake, we'll say a 3-car spot. You have 3 cars that you are needing to fill. Sure. Whatever their purpose may be. It could be tow vehicles, it could be moving people around, or it could just be a garage full of classics or exotics because you have cars already. If you've got 3 empty spaces that you would be looking to fill, what cars would you be looking at?
All right, so not having given this a lot of forethought, but off the top of my head, I think that number one, just the first thing that came to my mind was I'm really digging the restored Broncos right now. It's a really hot, collector market. We just said don't buy cars as investments, so I'm not saying that, but just watching that whole thing happen has been really cool. And there's a company here in town that specializes in those. I don't really know them. I'm not affiliated, I'm just aware of them.
Classic Ford Bronco out of Powell, Ohio.
Yeah, they do really cool stuff. So I think I'd get a restored, beautiful, Bronco, fun weekend cruiser type vehicle. Going more toward some faster vehicles, I think that I've always loved Lamborghini. I love almost everything they do. Not so much the SUV, but I love all their cars. And they're teasing this new Huracan. Literally just saw the renderings. I think they're leaking photos, maybe intentionally, maybe not. But today I saw, and I don't even know what it's called yet, but the new Huracan looks amazing. It's like the closest to their race version that they'll have released so far. And so probably would grab one of those. And then I think also I'm a little bit of an old man in a few different ways, but one of them is that I have always really appreciated luxury sedans.
Okay.
It's not at all what's cool for a 32-year-old, and I get that, but I love luxury sedans. So big German sedans, like the A6 was cool, but like I would love an A8. I would love an S-Class. I'd love maybe not a 7 Series, but I want a big luxury sedan. I currently drive a pickup truck that has very few options. It's not very luxurious. And I love it.
Utilitarian.
I love it for all that it is, but there's a lot of things it's not. And so I probably get like the super fast exotic, the luxury sedan, and then like an awesome classic Ford Bronco as a parade vehicle, literally and figuratively.
There you go. Yeah, I think you were talking about the Huracan STO, maybe?
Correct. Yes.
I'm looking at a picture of it on Drive. It has it almost has the center stack, the intake that's right on top of the hood, but it's supposed to be rear-wheel drive, and it's got like an insane-looking wing on the back, all in that swirly vehicular camo that they do to hide things. But it definitely looks like a purpose-built race car, for sure.
Yeah, I think it's really fun. And I mean, they haven't even announced it yet for real, so we don't know all the particulars, but I think that'd be cool. I mean, if you want to go based on like cars that are out officially, I really like the Aventador in general, the whole platform.
Right.
Big, clunky, wide V12 is heaven to me. I love those cars. I've driven a couple of them. So an Aventador Roadster would be amazing.
An Aventador Roadster would be awesome.
I got to take one to Concorso Italiano a few years back, and it's a longer story for another day, but I ended up winning some awards for that car. I didn't own the car. I was taking it there for a buddy. Didn't even know it was up for an award. And I'll tell you that whole story another time off the record. but yeah, it was fun, and I got to drive it through like the winner's circle stage and accept an award. And then they asked me on camera and live to the whole event on a microphone questions about the car, thinking I was the owner. And again, I never represented that it was mine. I parked it in a spot I was told to park it in, and then I was off with some friends hanging out and enjoying the show. And then they frantically came and found me. Oh, you won! And so I'm sitting there. What do you love about the car? And I'm like, so okay, this is my moment where I'm either gonna disrupt the flow of this entire thing by saying this is not my car. The guy is a buddy, and it's go through the whole thing, or do I just play along? And I just played along. So it was pretty funny.
Sometimes when you're in that moment, you just got to go with the flow, roll with the punches.
And the funny thing is, my friends are dying. They're filming me, and they know it's not mine. They think this is the funniest thing I've ever seen. And I have videos of them, like, they're shaking the phone. They're laughing so hard. But the funniest part was after I pulled that first fake interview off, I put it back. I'm like, whew, that was crazy. Oh, my God, what happened? Like, that was amazing. But thought that I was done, and then it won a second award, and I had to do it again.
Oh, gosh.
Anyway, but I love the Aventador Roadster. That would be great. I would love... whether it's the SVJ or just the base, quote unquote, Aventador Roadster.
Right. Yeah, I think air quotes base is probably the best way to put an Aventador, because they are. V12 Lambo. Yeah, the only, they're a dime a dozen. So, Well, I think, guys, that's been about an hour worth of your time, and it's been an amazing experience to sit down with Paul, and I know that he's going to be a big help here in the Central Ohio area with our car enthusiasts, and, Hagerty's happy to partner with them in 2020, and we're looking forward to the future with Cars and Coffee and everything that Paul's been working on. I think there's some amazing things coming out. Paul, is there anything you want to pitch?
No pitches. I just want to thank you for your having me on the podcast for 2 different episodes. That's been pretty cool. I've enjoyed it, and
they went over well. I think we'll have to do it again because it did go over well with most people. So,
yeah, and thanks again for supporting Cars and Coffee through Hagerty, but also personally as well. You put a lot into it, and I appreciate your support and enthusiasm very much. And look forward to, we're gonna have a little bit of a winter break here, but I look forward to seeing you again in the spring.
Yeah, I'm going to try to make sure that winter is not an excuse for us not to do cool car stuff. So hopefully, Ohioans, be safe out there. Wear your mask. Don't take this stuff lightly. So we all can enjoy sooner or later to get together, whether it be digitally or in person for some cool car stuff. So, and there's more to come from Hagerty. Be looking out for that. But guys, that has been our episode, part 2 with Paul Milligan. Luckily, we got to talk all about cars. So this has been the Midwest Motoring Podcast, sponsored by Hagerty. As always, guys, stay safe, stay healthy, and keep driving.